off to Mark Facknetz. I also wanted to just celebrate one more thing, which is that as part of this project, we have received grant money for what we're talking about, but we also are excited because with the COVID virus and everything changing, the Myrtle collaboration leadership decided instead of having a second cohort of congregations to participate in this, to actually use that money for some direct aid and direct action with partners that we're already working with. And so because of that, we've been able to have some grant money going to Open Doors, Our Community Place, Pleasant View, New Bridges, and the Sanctuary House Church, as well as Massanetta Springs. So that's really, really exciting that we've been able to be part of that. So just wanted to make sure everybody knew about that. So now we will go ahead and get started, and I will turn it over to Mark.
What does it take to nurture a life of meaning and purpose? That's the central question that launched a journey of listening, sharing stories, and discerning the calling of our community in this time and place. As Stephanie mentioned, back in January of 2019, she and I and Mary Lou went to Lowell, to learn more about the Myrtle collaboration. We'd been invited to be one of 8 congregations to join, and it carried with it an offer of up to $30,000 to fund something new, something to nurture lives of meaning and purpose. The journey has not been straightforward. We've answered an open-ended and rapidly evolving invitation to congregations to discern and create new expressions of Christian nurture. And we've tried to explain a process and project that wasn't fully developed with a name that provided no further enlightenment. Myrtle really means a shrub to most of us. Over the course of listening circles, another trip to Louisville, and ongoing conversations here in Harrisonburg, something else began to take shape. Something new, but also something very old, in the grand scheme of our faith and in the relatively short history of Trinity. Part of this was thinking about hospitality as a spiritual discipline. Hospitality that is not only offered, but received. Hospitality that changes us along the way. We also recognize that there are so many gifts all around us, not only those in our church family, and that each of us has something to teach and to learn. When we thought about how God is calling Trinity in this time and place, we recognized that over the years we have had many different calls through house churches and now also Mark's groups. We hope to discern some project that would transcend any individual call, but have the potential to feed all calls.
The ancient truth that is part of Trinity's DNA is the call to both the inward and the outward journey. We are called to be active and engaged in the world around us, living as disciples of Jesus by following his example. We are also called to deepen our discipleship through spiritual practices and draw us closer to God. We ignore one at the peril of the other. We know that we are called to mission, and we also recognize that we aren't the only ones carrying out God's work in our community. We know that there are plenty of challenges, but we see a wealth of passion and desire within the community to rise to meet those challenges. We know that we can't sustain this outward journey unless we are centered by the inward journey. Over the years, we have grown through different kinds of spiritual practices, ranging from centering prayer and sacred reading of scripture to yoga and meditation. It takes practice and discipline, and it often takes a community of learning and support. That led the Myrtle Marks group to discern establishing a space at the church to nurture spiritual practices with an eye towards supporting the work of activism and mission that we are doing at Trinity, and that others in our community are doing as well. That's our hope for the centering space, a space for care, for centered care. CARE is an acronym which stands for contemplation, action, renewal, and expression. When we learned last summer that the harbor room could no longer be used for overnight guests, we thought it would be a great physical space to anchor this new endeavor. The room itself could be used for day retreats, stocked with various resources, and made available for members, individuals, and groups in the community and beyond. Other rooms might be adapted to allow space for yoga, meditation, classes, or other gatherings with this kind of emphasis. Then came COVID. The need for spiritual grounding is even more important, but obviously plans for a space at the church had to be put on hold. However, we quickly saw that in this challenge, a new opportunity might arise. Rather than beginning by launching our centering space at Trinity, we will launch it as a virtual space with a new website, www.centering-space.org. It will take us a little while to get things up and running, but we welcome your suggestions.
For those of you who didn't join us on the live meeting, we had some technical difficulties trying to show a video. So I've edited that part out and have jumped right through the part where we picked up and did a live version of what you would have seen on the video. That explains why it skips from one piece to the other.
Just then the disciples came. They were astonished that he was speaking with a woman, but no one said, "What do you want?" or "Why are you speaking with her?" Then the woman left her water jar and went back to the city. She said to the people, "Come and see a man who told me everything that I have ever done. He cannot be the Messiah, can he?" They left the city and were on their way to him.
Pay attention, be astonished, tell someone. The woman of Samaria paid attention to what Jesus was saying to her, and she certainly was astonished, so astonished, in fact, that she left her water jar. Remember, she had originally come to the well to fetch water. Do you ever forget what you come into a room for? I know I do. But the woman was in such a rush to get back to the city to tell someone the story of a man who had told her everything she had ever done. And whom did she tell the story to? The people, Samaritans. We know no more than that. But she not only told them the story she had heard, then she asked a question. Did they think that he could be the Messiah? Well, this was too much for the people, and they left the city to go to see this man for themselves. What does this mean for us? What story do we at Trinity have to tell? And to whom? And how are we to tell that story? I don't know about you, but I'm often uncomfortable telling others the story of how Christ is working within and among us. I think of what others often call Presbyterians, the frozen chosen. Uncomfortable, shy, awkward, retiring, stuck to their pews, or in Trinity's case, stuck to our chairs. Well, that's me. Have you ever put a glass of water with ice in it on a napkin? The condensation on the outside of the glass causes it to stick to the napkin. But when you pick up the glass, it sticks to the napkin, creating an awkward, uncomfortable moment, much like when we are stuck to our chairs. But if you just sprinkle a few grains of salt on the napkin before putting the glass on it, the glass no longer sticks to the napkin. And a little salt is just what we need if we are to get out of our chairs and tell our story. What is Trinity's story? What is Trinity's abundance? How is Trinity celebrating and sharing that abundance? What is our salt? What is your salt?
Meanwhile, the disciples were urging him, "Rabbi, eat something." But he said to them, "I have food to eat that you don't know about." So the disciples said to one another, "Surely no one has brought him something to eat." Jesus said to them, "My food is to do the will of him who sent me and to complete his work. Do you not say 4 months more and then comes the harvest? But I tell you, look around and see how the fields are ripe for harvesting. The reaper is already receiving wages and is gathering fruit for eternal life, so that the sower and the reaper may rejoice together. For here the saying holds true, one sows and another reaps. I sent you to reap, not labor. Others have, and you have entered into their labor." Many Samaritans from that city believed in him because of the woman's testimony. "He told me everything I've ever done." So when the Samaritans came to him, they asked him to stay with them, and he stayed there 2 days. And many more believed because of his word. They said to the woman, "It is no longer because of what you said that we believe, for we have heard for ourselves, and we know that this is truly the Savior of the world." So that was the gospel passage that was appointed by the Revised Common Lectionary for March 15th, which was the day that we were originally scheduled to give a service explaining sort of what the Myrtle group was trying to achieve and what we had experienced when we were in Cincinnati. And for that reason, we had built a component of storytelling into the service, um, uh, interspersing little pieces of testimony, if you will, with the gospel reading itself. So that's the end of the gospel reading for March 15th, which we thought spoke pretty directly to what we had in mind with the Myrtle collaboration and to what some of us had experienced in Cincinnati.
We have been paying attention. We have been astonished. And now we are talking about it. Let's pause for a minute to see if there are any questions. We have taken inspiration from some similar centers, the Center for Action and Contemplation, Gravity Center, and the Hive Cincy, to name a few. Those of us who went to Cincinnati engaged in a seminar with the pastor, leader, and founder of the Hive, and we can share some of our thoughts and experiences. One of the things that he was about was grounding yourself before you start. And he would have us stand and get our feet firmly planted on the floor, and then put our hands on our heart and take some deep breaths, and then have us do different exercise, holding our hands out in front of us, over our head, pointing down at the ground, behind us, and then outstretched. And then we would do that, and then we would do it again and repeat, following what he told us to do. And it was Jesus above us, Jesus beneath us, Jesus in front of us, Jesus behind us, Jesus to the right, and Jesus to the left. And after each one, we would go back to that. And then from that, it was help us to center ourselves, to come forward, to move forward in whatever thing we're going to be doing. Anybody else that was there want to add? Mark or Linda?
Rick, one of the things that impressed me was how much he wanted us to get in tune with our bodies and what was happening in our bodies, which I realized is not something that I have been encouraged to do, nor do I do it very well, but that has stuck with me to try to be tuned in to what our bodies are telling us about any given feeling or emotion.
And I think as we thought about this, as you mentioned earlier, that we had hoped to originally start with some type of a centering space, a physical centering space, using the harbor room for a variety of purposes, and that's just right now just not possible. But we talked about the designing of a website, and there are a number of things that can be done there. And I think Mark Dewey, you have already been doing some type of activities that would be helpful to people just on our website, not on the Centering Space website, but on the Trinity website. Maybe you could mention something about that.
Yeah, I've been involved with some other people here on this call in a bi-weekly contemplative practice that's called Lectio Divina. So what all those words mean is that, so contemplative practice, it's a discipline which is meant to sort of open up space inside of yourself so that the things that normally occupy your inner being can be set aside temporarily in order for God to come in and fill that space. And the mechanism for achieving that is scripture. So the way it works is we read a short passage of scripture and then we contemplative response to the short passages that we're reading. And so that discipline is called Lectio Divina. And a few of us, Jeff, Mary Lou, Teresa, me, twice a week at 8:30 in the morning on Wednesdays and Fridays to practice that contemplation together. The link to that group is on Trinity's website and on the Facebook page. So we're meeting tomorrow. Just I'll be sending out the reminders to everybody after we get off this call. If anybody wants to join, please by all means drop in. There's no preparation is necessary. There's no obligation to continue. But every Wednesday and Friday morning, we're getting together in this space. I don't know how the others are feeling about it, but one of the things that I've really come to look forward to is just the chance to be together with these people in that kind of common purpose. And I know it seems odd to say together with these people when we're all, in different places, but it does begin to feel like, I'm sitting down with Jeff and Mary Lou and Teresa for coffee in the morning. And I've been really grateful for that. So if you want to stop by for coffee tomorrow morning, by all means, please do.
I'm in.
Good.
Yeah. Just bring your own coffee.
It's decaf otherwise.
As you hear about this idea, what gifts come to mind? Your own gifts, gifts of the others in the Trinity community, or gifts in our neighborhood and beyond? Another way to think about this, if you could teach a class on anything, what would it be? What other classes might you find within the Trinity community? What about in the neighborhood and beyond? One of the speakers, well, it was a pair of speakers. He's a Methodist minister in Indianapolis who has made I guess a life practice of taking calls in financially disadvantaged churches, and mainly in inner city. And he's written a book which a lot of us have read, and I'm afraid I don't have the name of the book right on top of my head. Maybe Linda can tell me about it, tell us what it is. Anyway, what he was finding is that there were people in the community that, even though they did not have
That's it. Yeah.
have that much.
Virginia's got it.
You got it?
Yeah, Virginia has it.
Oh.
Yeah, it's having nothing, possessing everything.
Right. And but anyway, they would find that if they went out and one of the two was a neighbor, a resident of the area, and he was a good listener, and he would walk about and find these different things and bring information back to the pastor, but they had people that were doing things in the community. So even though it didn't necessarily bring members participating in the church, it helped the church do mission within the community and help strengthen and grow the community. And they were quite a dynamic speaking.
One of the things that impressed me in the story in that book was of the church deciding that what they wanted to do was to have, meals, dinners, suppers, whatever, for the homeless or the folks who might need it in that community. And actually what they had in the community was a fellow who had been a chef and became a great friend of the church and started preparing meals himself, excellent cook. And so he was preparing meals for the people in the church. Instead of a potluck, he would provide, they would pay, but he would do all the preparation and everything else. And so when the church had actually started out trying to provide food for everyone in the community, what happened is that the community started providing food for the church itself. And I just thought that so often this is what we do, is that we go out saying, how can we help you? Instead of what gifts do we all have to share together? So it's just a kind of a reversal of how mission typically works.
As I've thought about our location and our neighbors, I'm aware that we have a few, actually my immediate neighbors on both sides completed last year yoga teacher training, the same training that Bryce did a couple years ago. And there are a few other yoga teachers, certified yoga teachers, that are here in the neighborhood. We also have somebody that teaches a number of classes on mindfulness and leads meditation. That's Jared Featherstone, who lives over on Toppin Court in the neighborhood. And a couple of our members have actually been doing a series of free meditation offerings that he's had, and have found that to be really helpful and engaging. So we have some of these resources in people in the neighborhood, and the thought about offering space that could be a service to the community and a place to provide that connection was really attractive. Given the current circumstances, maybe we could offer some of those kinds of things online. But as I was thinking about what gifts we have in the congregation and in the neighborhood, those certainly came to mind. I think also something like the embodied prayer that Sue's led, or some sort of prayerful embodied movement would be something that we could very easily offer, either on site once we get up and running, or even to do something online.
What about
Certainly one.
I'm
Go ahead, Sally.
Okay, yeah, I was just going to say I would love to do a writing retreat with Mark and a group of other people. I know there's several writers in the church and outside the church, so I think that would be cool.
I think Mark Dewey would love to do that.
Either Mark's good with me. Both Marks are good.
No, I'm all in, Sally. Thank you.
Two of the things that we had prepared to do during Lent that we didn't get to do were the soul collages. That's can be a very meaningful spiritual experience. And the labyrinth. We have a wonderful labyrinth that Anne Renard and Amy made for us that is an in-house labyrinth. So we have those things just waiting in the wings that we can do something with, if not online, in person, when we have that opportunity.
And we have the labyrinth out in front of the church too. So.
Speaking of which, the stones need to be raised. and I'm speaking literally and figuratively. But yeah, no, I mean, it's something that when we are maybe practicing some social distancing and yet want to be outside and on our knees, we could be out there putting some sand and gravel under those blocks and bringing the labyrinth back in again. Though I hasten to say that, you know, when that thing was originally conceived, one of the ideas, which I thought was magnificent, is that things like that eventually do sink into the soil. They disappear in the physical world, but not in the spiritual world. But I think we could raise the rocks a little bit, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So Mark, maybe if you set a time and place, we could gather to do that.
We could indeed, yeah. I'll talk to Lisa about it. I know that she's working right now, but she's also very, very interested in that. You know, of course, it was Wyatt's thing. Right. I want to throw this in too. I don't know, many of you maybe have seen the labyrinth at the Arboretum that was the brainchild of a former colleague of mine who passed away, Ron Nelson. I was over there. I walked over there yesterday, and as I came near the labyrinth, I thought, surely it has been covered by underbrush and all. It's better than it ever was. So it's the kind of thing that if you find a way that you can physically manifest yourself to the world, I think the world takes care of it, right? And you know, or uses it in a way that gives you pleasure. For example, I'm very pleased to see that the door fell off the playhouse at church. Because it was a bad door, but you know, I mean, no, seriously, I mean, it means that something is being used in a way that's fine. Yeah.
Where do you feel some sparks of excitement or inspiration as you hear more about what is taking shape? What ideas or suggestions do you have as we move forward?
I'm excited to hear about some of these ideas because they feel very inclusive. And, you know, I think it will allow people who may not be comfortable always in a traditional church setting or high church, as Andy likes to say. I think this would allow people an entryway in.
One question I had of the Myrtle group is, once we're able to occupy the space again, have you given any thought to doing like a introductory session of the possible uses of the harbor room for workshops, meditation center? Have you given any thought to that at this point?
Yeah, we've had some discussions about the different things that it could be used for, yes. And also we've talked about improving access, since it is upstairs, using some of the Myrtle money to get a chairlift that goes up the side of the outside stairs to get those that can't scamper up the stairs anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say that Massanetta, the board has been talking about how we can do more virtual things. So maybe there might be a way that we could collaborate with you.
Mm.
It's always a good thought.
I do have a feeling, though, that what we want to do is stop trying to change the name of the harbor room. I think we should just keep calling it that. That way we can root this transformation in our history, and it's something that was really important to us. So that's just an offhand thought.
Well, that's not a bad one, actually, and we could consider it a safe harbor.
Yeah, exactly. And we need to find our own harbors to in order to sail out for others. But I think, you know, and that's what I'm really excited about right now, is the way so many have responded so generously to what are the real and the perceived needs of the community, individuals in the community. The amount of resources that we're sending, for example, to New Bridges has just got them baffled that it is so ample. So I'm very pleased with that.
I also wanted to speak to Sally's comment about the inclusivity. That was one of the things that we thought about when we were thinking of a name for the space itself. So centering space doesn't sound too churchy. And in some ways, you know, having the limitations on the physical meeting space that we have now, it actually makes it, by starting it online, makes it then again one more step removed, that people that may not be as comfortable coming to something at the church could maybe get plugged in through the online resource.
It seems to me that one of the important things is going to be deciding that, okay, it's Wednesday and Friday mornings for Lectio Divina, and what other things might we offer, and then, or others might help us in offering, and then how do we do a PR, you know, to get this out and known to the community, to the church and to the community.
This does not speak to what Linda just said, but just thinking about the kinds of people who might be comfortable or not comfortable coming. I have a good friend who's Jewish, and there's no Jewish congregation active here now, as far as I know, or at least there's not a rabbi. But she and another friend of hers often wish that they could have a community like we have. So, you know, I don't know if we would think about including people like that who don't have a faith community, and how we could make that possible.
I think that, Sally, exactly what you just said, at least in my imagination, has been a big part of how this project, which we finally have settled on calling Centering Space, has evolved, in that it does open a place for people who might not otherwise walk into what, you know, you and I might conventionally think of as a church. I think that, and so this is my own perspective now, that there are lots and lots of people, hundreds of thousands in this area, who have a kind of hunger which they do not attach to conventional church experiences. I think it's a hunger for spiritual engagement, but they're not going to go to what they consider a church for it. One of the strange, or one of the, I guess, serendipitous consequences, it seems to me, of our being prohibited from gathering in the space itself, is that there's, it seems to me, a significant kind of opening exactly to people who don't see themselves as church connected, but who nevertheless have a spiritual hunger. People, because we've been pushed, I think that the doors are wide open to those people who would not normally, you know, imagine coming through the literal doors, even of a place that's as open and welcoming as Trinity. So I think that there are some unexpected gifts, if you will, attached to our being forced into a mode that we did not choose for ourselves.
What's interesting, there is a good number of people that that have come to Trinity off and on in the past several months, and I've spoken with them, but they don't come every single week until we started the online services. And they have been on that every single time. And I think, you know, what Mark is saying is very true. I mean, there's kind of an anonymity to it, although, I mean, I know who they are, but you know, there is some anonymity there that makes it more comfortable for people. to participate. That's just a thought.
Yeah, and I think one of the things we've mentioned, several of us, and I've heard from other people, is the blessing that has come from all of this online Zooming and recording and things of worship services, and getting to attend different kinds of worship experiences. It's been an interesting blessing. One of the things that I've really appreciated has been being able to see my brother's worship service every week. And so I attend Trinity, and then I can see what he's recorded and check out other worship experiences. And that has been a real blessing in this. So this online experience, learning how to use Zoom, learning how to use some of these other things, I think is a blessing of all of this.
It was interesting. I talked to one of my sons today, and he said he had spent, let's see, 9 hours a day for 3 days in a row in a Zoom conference with 250 people. It was a conference he had been planning to attend, and there were people from 22 different countries that were there. And so he said it was draining, but they had everything that they needed, and they also went into the breakout rooms, and so that they could have the individual sessions that you would normally get, breakouts when you go to a conference, and then come back together again and then break out again. And so they ran it internationally just as you would a regular conference. And other than the hotel business and the airline business, it worked out much better for all of them. And so there are many opportunities, different ways of doing things that we could be thinking about. We don't have to be thinking strictly of seeing 25 people on the screen here that, and that's all that you see. So there are lots of different ways of handling.
I wonder, the question was raised, it wasn't used this language, but marketing. And I wonder about collaboration with other congregations. I'm thinking particularly of Rise, who seems to have another kind of grasp on this sort of area in our community, and other faith communities that might, how they might be involved or tapping into them as potential exposure points.
I think there's no shortage of areas that we could explore and have collaborations with.
Yeah, Anne Hal just mentioned collaborating with Massanetta.
Right.
I think, yeah, that's a rich opportunity to collaborate with all kinds of folks. I mean, that's the whole point, really, is to find ways to coordinate and collaborate with people in the community. So yeah, I think we're right on when we're thinking in that direction.
Well, I want to say something awful, which is that as much as I see this potential for expansion, I'm also aware that of all the Zooming I'm doing with the church, I'm seeing basically the same 12 to 20 people over and over again. And I'm very concerned that there might be some among us who are feeling disconnected. And so I think some kind of concerted, sharing of an obligation just to go through the directory and touch bases with people might be in order. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So the pastoral care team has been working on that since the beginning of COVID. We've been calling people on a semi-regular basis, not everybody, but and are trying to stay in touch with that. So if you're hearing of particular folks, please let us know, because we're trying to make concerted efforts around that. Mark, your point is well noted and well observed.
Well, I'm really happy to hear that. I would say then, Jeff, if you feel like you want to pass around some lists of names or individuals to to warm up to, then please feel free. It's not that hard to do. So thank you.
Yeah. We can do some of that too.
Obviously, being on the board of Massonet, I'm spending a lot of my time dealing with issues that we're having there, and the board is calling over 50 churches in the next couple of days because we had to cancel the middle school conference. And I did a couple of those this afternoon, and just having a person call you up that you've never met, but we have this connection with Massonet, I think the personal phone call, I still think has a lot of value to it, not just emails. So I would encourage you to continue to do that. I also would add that obviously the Muslim community and the Jewish community have always felt very comfortable at Trinity. And so there might be a way to involve them in that collaboration as well.
How much of this are we talking about in collaboration and all interfaith and all having to do almost primarily with online as opposed to what we might do within the church building, the church house, once we're able to get back in there again? And the harbor room specifically, which has its size and space limitations, but also the church itself. I mean, this is the Myrtle project is more than just the harbor room. So
let me just say, one of the things Massonet is looking at is being obviously we're a place of healing, and that we have something called LEAP, which is led by a Presbyterian minister. Virginia knows him well from Blacksburg. They do trauma healing. And so we're working with them and looking at maybe later on doing trauma healing for healthcare workers and stuff like that. So I could see there were some skills that Trinity is developing that we could use, along the line of that.
All right, so it's my job to kind of finish us up here. So just to let you know what happens next. Over the next 2 weeks, we're going to have 4 more opportunities for a conversation. On Tuesdays, next Tuesday the 12th, and then the one after on the 19th, we'll be meeting at 7. And then on Thursdays, May 14th and 21st, we'll be meeting at 4 p.m. On each of those days, we're going to be focusing on the acronym CARE. Once again, what that's standing for right now is contemplation, action, renewal, and expression. And so I think we've heard some good suggestions tonight. Does anybody else have any other things that would be helpful to make sure that we cover under those 4 topics? So once again, it's contemplation, action, renewal, and expression. All right, so I'm hearing radio silence, so I think that means that we're good. Give me a thumbs up that we're okay, because when I don't hear anything, I'm wondering if you hear me. All right, so I'm gonna, if you wouldn't mind, I'm gonna close this with prayer. Lord, this is a really hard time for so many people. Thank you for everyone who joined with us tonight to help us discern what's the future for the centering space. Thank you that we know that you'll lead us where we need to go. Lord, please be with all of us and with all that we love. Amen.